Hi, this is Amy. I am back at it again with more Avatar The Last Airbender content. And we are going to go light on the talking about Korra today since my guest has not seen it all the way through yet. But I am very excited today to talk about this topic with Haxdogma. So, Haxdogma, please tell the dear listeners a little bit about yourself and
Of
what
course.
you got going on.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just want to start off and say thank you so much for having me. Avatar is something that I've loved since I was a kid. I've watched it so much. Before Netflix existed and you could watch everything at once. It was just, waiting until it was the next episode on Nickelodeon, and then you could finally get the entire story all together. And ever since I was a kid, this has been such an important story to me, and I'm so fortunate to be able to talk about it now. Um, So I think my dogs are going crazy, but
We
yeah, my
always
name is.
welcome any pets here on the Amy Blackfire channel/podcast, so don't worry.
I'm sure they'll come running around eventually. Yeah, so my name is Haxdogma, and you can find me on YouTube or Twitter at the same handle. And yeah, excited to talk some Avatar.
I am too. Yeah, it actually was a little serendipitous because you've been working on all Marvel stuff over there at the
Yeah,
Hackstogma YouTube channel, and so when you had mentioned that you were kind of wanting to dip into Avatar, I saw my in. I
yes.
was like, "You better be ready, Hacks, because I'm going to at you with. We will talk about literally anything you want." Which is, like I was like, I got character studies, theme studies, just anything, whatever you want to
love
do.
love it.
And you mentioned talking about the finale,
Yeah,
and I was really, really excited about that.
yeah. I just think the finale, like, man, for all of these years, ever since I was a kid, I remember seeing this and thinking this is something special. And so long afterwards, this is such a great benchmark for animation, for storytelling, for what a cartoon can be, and seeing it everything come together and all the dogma about what Aang is supposed to do, and all the options around him, and just the way that they chose to tell the final chapter of the story. Just oh man, so good. And yeah, I will never, ever, 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 ever forget both the scene in the background here where the lights are up and it's just like this big moment of just raw energy, and you just, you can feel exactly, what's happening just with two contrasting colors. And it's so good. I mean,
And they did the
oh,
classic, it looks like Aang's gonna be overtaken,
yeah,
but
yeah,
then he sends back his chi and he's like,
yeah.
not today, Satan. Like
No, and
that
but it makes
hellfire
you
lord, you're
think.
going down. Like it was
Yeah,
very,
yeah.
very well done. And Hacks, just think of all of the finales as a show watcher
Oh, yeah.
that the vitriol coming from the fandom about how terrible this was, how this was wrong, and you also maybe being disappointed in some areas.
Oh, of
This
course,
is one
yeah,
of the
yeah.
few finales where my gripes are extremely, extremely minor,
Oh,
and that the fandom
absolutely.
overall
Yeah,
is like very positive about the finale. It's actually kind of a very rare case in
yeah,
in fandom, I would say, like just in nerd culture and fantasy, sci-fi, all of it. It's people
yeah,
are really hard on finales, and you know what I
yeah.
tell them? I tell them there's, I study Chinese
Hmm.
language and history, and the last emperor is always blamed for the fall of the dynasty, right? The finale, like the last, it's always really looked at and scrutinized.
Always going to be, yeah. That's a really good point. That's a really good way to look at it. Maybe we should give finales much more leeway than we give them, and not be so hard to criticize everything we possibly can about finales. And I think a lot of the fandom does that. There's certain times, like, Game of Thrones, of course, I think is heavily criticized, maybe the most criticized. But of course, plenty others like WandaVision. I had issues with WandaVision's finale. Not meaning that I hated it, but that overall it was amazing. But of course, they could have been just a little better for some reasons. But so I agree. Like, this is the rare scenario where it seems like there is so few things that we can actually talk about that would go against this being a great finale. And yeah, so Avatar, go Avatar.
Go Avatar.
Yeah,
And I think there are many reasons, Hacks, why I think this particular finale is so amazing. And I will say, storytelling is one of the, I think, strongest, and focus on themes which are
yeah,
important, and focusing on okay, yeah, obviously with Zuko's mom, the arc, like it felt kind of there was a loose end, but Zuko's arc was complete.
Yes,
And up
without
to
a doubt.
Fire Lord, and then he will of course go on to have another arc later in his life. And you
Yeah,
can check out graphic novels if you want to know what happened to his mom. So the fandom wasn't completely left without answers. It was just a different medium.
yeah,
But I mean, very few things are you're left kind of
yeah.
dissatisfied.
And even the mom route, like that was something that was never a big part of the series. Like there was, I think maybe 4 episodes that I can remember that specifically talked about it. But it was such a big thing for him, right? So it's important without a doubt. But it wasn't so important that it needed to be in the finale, right? Like it would have felt like they were just rushing to get it done. So I'm so glad that there is other media out there that people can consume that has that story and what should be a fully fleshed out story, as opposed to just, oh, also everybody's happy, include the mother, end of story. She's also a billionaire now. Who knows, right? Like, something like that. But yeah, so I'm glad that I guess that it wasn't included, just because maybe it didn't need to be.
Yeah, and I also think that this, in the end, it was also about Team Avatar, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Especially, season 3 where it's complete with Zuko and Toph in it, right? It
Oh,
was
so
really
good.
about kind of them taking a breath before they kind of start on the new adventure. You find out with Korra, very
Yeah,
light spoilers, everyone, for Korra. You
yeah.
find out with Republic City that obviously Avatar Aang and Fire Lord Zuko did a lot more after
Oh yeah.
this. And
Which
so
just
I
feels
think
so good.
that's
Yeah.
why I'm like, thank you, Nickelodeon, for finally doing an Avatar verse,
Oh
because
yeah.
any timeline, it doesn't matter. We could get a Kiyoshi series, right?
Yeah.
We could like just follow an avatar. You don't even have to necessarily follow an avatar. Maybe follow a political leader in one of the nations during a time of turmoil.
Yeah.
There are so many possibilities because of the four nations, and that's what I'm saying about themes, is that all of these themes like balance between the four nations and balance between the elements, and shattering of the illusion that the elements are separate, which Uncle
Mm.
Iroh talks about to Zuko when he's drawing in the
Yeah.
sand and he's given him a lesson, right? And that's of course, huge Chinese symbolism going on here, obviously, because you have the idea of this kind of balance, right? Like with yin
Yeah.
and yang, or with the five elements, which would be in Chinese, what the four elements is what they went with for this, which totally works
Mm.
because it's a lot of Indian origins as well. So still Asian, still
Super
counts.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a lot going on. So balance is one of my favorite. I'm going to do a whole episode just talking about that. So I'm going to leave
Yeah.
that there. But that is one of the huge themes that is then therefore it comes to an end because Aang takes the Fire Lord's bending away. I mean, he
Yeah.
was literally using fire to destroy the other elements. It was the symbolism
Mind
is
blowing.
one of the
Yeah.
most clear and yet beautiful and nuanced,
Yeah.
especially for something that I was a kid when this was coming out. I was watching it as a kid, and I still understood you're not supposed to genocide a whole other nation,
Yeah.
because that throws and this, it has a lot of spiritual implications too that maybe I only got later, when I got older, but they're there for you to go back and explore. And this is one of the few shows for me that when I rewatch it, I love it exactly
Oh,
the same, if not
yeah.
more, every time.
Honestly, I
So
feel so happy whenever I talk about Avatar to like people who've never seen it, because it's like I know that
yeah,
eventually, even if they don't watch it right when I suggest it, I know that eventually they'll watch it and it'll be a part of their lives like it is for
and they'll
me. And they'll
understand.
understand how
Yeah,
it's so good. Yeah. Um,
exactly. Yeah. And I think that this finale, and this is why I'm glad that you suggested talking about this, is kind of textbook how to end a story, but leave
oh yeah.
room for future exploration.
Yeah, I mean, like everything is tied together so well, in a very unique way that that isn't explicitly obvious, right? Like, of course, and when you're talking about the scene in the background now, how they did the trope where, oh, we think he's going to lose control, like, they set it up. He in the moment it's described as like you have to have your character be unfaulting. Like you have to be the person who can do this, or else it will consume you. And when they deliver that line is when the red start or the orange starts, encroaching back, and it's like, oh my god, like is he that perfect person? Is he unfaulted in his will? Like, no, surely he's not. He's just still a child. We've seen
Yeah.
him fall so many times. Like like of course he was going to win in the end, of course, but at the same time it was still like they
It was
held
asking a
off.
lot of a little
Yeah.
boy. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
thing is one of the other things that actually during my last rewatch, which I'm probably up to 10 at this point,
Oh yeah.
it reminded me how quickly this adventure happened. It was all in
So
one
quick.
year, less than a
Yeah.
year, because they're like, "Hey, the
Yeah.
summer, the comet,
Yeah.
gotta hurry this up." So Aang has done a lot of growing, but he's still a kid. And so I
Yeah.
think what's interesting is one of my favorite scenes from the finale, which is a three-parter, which for a kid show is almost unheard of. That's very
So yeah.
long for a kid show, of course. But there is this whenever he talked to the other avatars and asked about what he should do for killing Ozai. And so this represents one of the major themes in Aang's story arc, which is spirituality and his
Yeah.
own spiritual correctness. I mean, he is essentially Buddhist, he is vegetarian, and he does not do violence onto
Yeah.
other
Nothing.
sentient beings.
Yeah.
And so my favorite actually, and so I kind of got this cute art of all of the last four elemental avatars. Right, so you've got the last
Mm,
original, like the last waterbender, fire, of course, Roku, firebender,
yeah.
and then we have Yang Chun, or also known as Yang Chen, who was the air nomad, and of course Kyoshi. So Yang Chun said something really interesting to uh, kind of to Aang, which is I understand your need for spiritual fulfillment,
Yeah.
right? But at that point, there didn't seem to be another way, and so
No.
she taught Yang Chen talks a lot about the world depends on you more
Yeah.
than your own your own spiritual path, which is
Yeah.
for a monk really hard to say.
Yeah, in the moment it was like it was basically non-advice, right? It was like, everything that everybody's told you, yes, that's right. Like I don't know how it's right, but it all fits together and you need to be doing what you need to be doing. And nobody can tell you that ultimately, I guess, but yeah, it was great. And honestly, like, Aang was, I guess, always pretty good with the spirits. Like, we kind of see a contrast with Korra, of course. Like, I watched the first season, um, and seeing the contrast between Korra and Aang really made me appreciate how much of a child Aang is. Like he had such a great positive attitude to bring us to the world. And so seeing that and seeing that there were no other options except for this very, very one thing that he could have done, and then he does it in that final moment is just God. Like when else does that happen? Like everything was perfect. There was no way that ever made sense for his exact route in the world until the very end, and then it all came together, and you were like, this is the perfect ending. This is what it only could have been. Is him winning, of course, but then him winning and not having to kill and not break that thing that is so crucial to him. Like, ooh, love it.
Absolutely, which is what it's something I'm definitely going to talk about for my Aang character study is that is technically the Buddhist path. The Buddhism is known
Mm,
as the middle way. So originally, the historical Buddha Siddhartha Gautama, he saw people that were ostentatious and they didn't care about anything in the world, and then he saw a monk who barely ate and was living very
yeah,
poor, and he thought there must be a middle way, which is then what Buddhism came to be known at in the early years. And so that's kind of
that's pretty
basically
cool.
what Aang does is he finds the middle way between not doing it, not
Yeah,
killing him, and therefore leaving the world. I mean, all the world, but especially the Earth Kingdom to burn,
yeah,
and or just like cricking his neck like an
yeah.
assassin. That's not Aang. So
No.
they had to find something that was the end to Aang's spiritual path, and that was learning how to take bending from a freaking lion turtle.
So
Which
cool.
is just so
So cool.
cool.
Yeah.
And then the way they integrate that in Korra is probably one of the best, kind
Oh
of
yeah.
continuity of story building that I've seen in
Yeah.
a while. Because I'm a little picky about that. If you make something so many years later in the same world, I'm like, I don't know.
It's
I get
all
out my
aligned. Yeah.
notebook and just
Yeah.
make sure the details make sense.
Even looking at
Um,
like the detailing of the sea lions, or the lion turtles, like again, then comparing that to Korra, it's like, whoa, they are drastically different. Of course, like Korra, when we're shown Juan, like he is very much, or it's a different style of animation, very cartoony.
Yes, they went
But
with
yeah.
Yeah, because the sea lion here, they're using some kind of more 3D looking stuff, and the other one was
Yeah.
2D. And also
Yeah.
the actually fun fact about Korra with the wand animation is that a
Mhm.
lot of the smoke and the fire and clouds and everything is based on traditional Chinese painting of like the
Oh
swirls.
yeah, definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
so
Yeah.
that's really fun because it's it's kind it reminded me also of the opening of one of my favorite movies, which was the animated Mulan, which is the only Mulan that
Oh,
I
oh,
recognize.
Mulan. Yeah, there is no other Mulan.
There is no, I don't know what you're talking about. There's
Yeah,
no
I
other
don't know.
Mulan.
Yeah, firstly, I don't know how they could remake Mulan and then
Because it's
it's perfect.
perfect.
It's perfect. It is the mod. It is the show. It is the movie.
I
That's it.
know.
Like,
I'm talking about it in May
oh,
on Cinematic Realms.
nice.
Everyone, check out what I co-host. Check out John Webster Film on YouTube, and you can find
Yeah.
Cinematic Realms where we talk about movies. And it's going to be my birthday episode, and so
Oh,
I picked
nice.
Mulan. So I'm very excited for that.
I could
Anyway,
I could definitely talk about
another
Mulan.
amazing feats
Yeah.
of animation with Mulan, and
Yeah.
amazing voice acting too, obviously.
Yeah.
Anyway, Avatar. So yeah, the lion turtles and the way that it kind of there is one question you have in the world building of Avatar, which is kind of how did this world come to be? Wasn't there some kind
Hmm.
of prehistoric or really early human kind of thing going on?
Yeah.
And then Korra, of course, gives that to us with Juan.
Yeah.
And here's the connection between the old and the new,
Yeah.
basically. It's very interesting the way that they integrate that. It's also just really cool.
Yeah. It
Freaking
is
lion turtle.
so cool. So cool.
Because on
And
its back is an island and it moves.
I also I forget if the finale is the first time we ever see a lion turtle or if we see it once before.
We hear it spoken about.
We hear it spoken about.
We know it's
Yeah.
in the lore of the world,
Yeah.
but
And
I
it's
don't
cool.
remember.
And it's also like before this point, it's never like shown the importance of, right? But this is like, the bestowing upon Aang of this power of, being able to strip people of ability, which is unheard of, right? But at the same time, so in the realm of possibility, like you're like, oh, why haven't I thought, I should have thought of this. Like this is
Yeah.
clearly a possibility there. Surely they have these powers, they can be taken away, but then it shows like, that
Well,
little
you have the
hint that
chi
where
blocking, right?
and the
So
chi
we've
blocking
already
as well.
seen
Yeah.
momentary loss of bending.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it's not a huge stretch.
Yeah, without a
Especially
doubt.
it's the freaking Avatar, the bridge
Yeah,
between,
yeah,
between our realm and the spirit realm. If anyone can do it, they can.
yeah. And at the same time, like it being in the finale when we learn that this power exists, and then also in Korra, the finale, that having the restoring of the powers be this thing that kind of comes out of nowhere, like them being paralleled in that manner to show both Korra's significant rise when she needed it spiritually, and then to show Aang finally able to do this thing that was impossible or thought to be impossible. Just so good. I mean,
Yeah.
quality.
It also is, if you think about the history of what Ozai's, ancestors did to Aang's people, right?
Oh
So
yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah.
also he is fighting as the Avatar to restore balance and to save everyone, but he's also in some ways getting some tiny kernel of justice for the air nomads.
Oh, without a doubt. When I saw him grab the goatee through the rocks, like you think he is on the ropes, and he's just like, nope, Avatar form done. I thought he was dead. Like I thought for sure he was just like Thanos going to rip the moon down and start throwing it at people. Like, dude, oh,
Yeah,
so
just
hype.
pummeling. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. And I also like the scene. What did you think about this scene, Hacks, where you have him realizing he needs to meditate and deal with his stuff, like deal with his shit.
Oh
So he
yeah.
basically puts the rock around him. When I
Yeah.
first saw that, I was like,
Yeah.
he go die, he go die. You're
Dude.
never gonna. This is the end. It's really
Yeah.
hot fire, and yeah, I mean, how long could rock withstand that? I was
And
wow, and
that's
and the way that it connects with the overall themes of like what the
yeah.
avatar has to do, what his duties are, right?
Yeah. And like the way they made it so, like, of course, most shows the good guy's going to win. It's a cartoon, the good guy's going to win. But then, the comet was there. Like it was peak firebending. It was, instead of just being able to shoot flames, you were shooting volcanoes out of your hands. Like, and so they set the whole thing. They start the entire fight by showing us the scope, right? They show us these massive, like, desolate structures, and of course, Ozai over top of it like a god, just breathing fire into the
Yeah, we
land.
got that awesome steampunky,
Oh
like
yes,
those air
yes,
balloons. I'm so here for it.
hype.
Steampunk
Yeah,
is probably one of my most favorite aspects of science fiction and fantasy
absolutely.
because it can be in either. And I study early Chinese science fiction, and there's a lot of air balloons, and it just excites the
Love it.
crap out of me. I'm so into
Yeah.
that steampunk feel, and that's one of the many reasons I also like Korra, because we've got Republic City. Is
Yes.
like, you want
Yes.
steampunk? I'm gonna give you
All the
steampunk.
steampunk.
Like
Steampunk to,
everywhere.
yeah, every degree you can possibly steampunk
Yes.
something. Yeah.
So what I like about that is that they already had those, it didn't come out of nowhere, that you
Yeah.
already have
Yeah.
this with but yeah, those war balloons and the way that, oh, and this also the
He
scene
crowned
with
himself the Phoenix, the Phoenix
the
King.
Phoenix King.
Like, and of course we've never
Dude.
seen him fight. Like, up until
Yeah.
that point, we've kind of had hints with the relation
Didn't
to
even
their
see his
family.
face until
Yeah, until
a
like
while.
yeah,
For
yeah.
a long time.
Just so to see him just come out, oh man. And of course, like we saw Iroh, so we know a similar way in which he can bend and how badass of a person he is, like, because
Yeah.
Iroh is so good, but assumingly even more so because he's of course the one in power, and had to be for so long and keep training even after Iroh had changed what he wanted to do in life. So of course they introduced this badass. It's the perfect circumstance for this fight to happen in favor of the Phoenix King. And of course, we notice the Avatar, and it kind of just levels that playing field in the perfect way that doesn't seem forced. Like, this was like the ticking time bomb introduced months before, and as soon as the comet's there, it's go time. And
Absolutely.
perfect.
And dear listeners, you can listen to my discussion with Nessie about Phoenix symbolism over on her channel,
Mm.
The Unspun Yarn. I also uploaded it on my podcast as a bonus episode. But one thing I talked about there was how the phoenixes usually represents the empress, and then the dragon represents the emperor, but it in general can represent royalty. So
Oh, nice.
that's what I love about the writers for Avatar: Last Airbender, and they really listen to their Asian kind of writers and
Yeah.
advisors, especially, man, the advisor on the Chinese language. I forget his name. I looked it up
So
a while
cool.
ago. It is flawless. Anything with Chinese on it, I've stopped the show and read it. It's flawless. He's worked.
What?
It is amazing. This is one of the
That's really
best
cool.
adaptations of Asian language in a Western anime. And I call it anime, and I'm proud, and I'm not an anime purist. Does not
Yeah.
have to come from Japan. It's in anime style. Anyway,
Totally
the
agree.
Phoenix is, we do have the idea of rising from the ashes. That is a Western thing. So in the East, they're just immortal. So
I had no idea. That's amazing.
it just means he literally just can't be killed if he's taking on the full. He's a royal personage who cannot be killed, who is unkillable.
I guess that makes sense. He didn't really rise from anything, right? Like, he never lost.
And nowadays the Western and Eastern Phoenix have commingled, and so of
Yeah.
course people in in Asia know that rising from the ashes is also associated with
Rebirth,
the Phoenix, but
yeah.
separately, when they were more separate mythologies, that was not the case. They were a symbol of immortality, like the crane.
Which makes sense. Which makes so much more sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really appreciate the Phoenix King imagery and what it means for one of my favorite characters, which is Azula. Because if he's the Phoenix King, what is she? She's always reaching, and she can never quite get it, and that her final kind of blow up with all of the issues that have been building up for her mentally. I can't wait to talk about it for my Azula's character study. But what did you think about that final Agni Kai with her brother? And we have Katara there. And
perfection. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, seeing her, honestly, for as bad as Azula is, for every piece of villainy that makes her, like, seeing her tied to the great without her power, understanding that she lost, like, seeing her just wailing around, like, screaming, trying to find any way to win and maintain that illusion that she's in control. Like, man, I love it. And it makes you feel for her. Like, it honestly, I don't know, it made me feel for her. Like, I was like, even after all of that, still a person, still misguided by something, and wanting something for the world. is a very human thing. Now, of course, she's probably a product of circumstance, and she does kind of lean into the fact that her mother didn't love her, which maybe she didn't, right? We see such a positive light and such, what she saw in Zuko. So, I'm sure you can make the argument that she saw that and internalized that as, the mother not giving her attention or not giving her the love that she deserved as a young girl needing a mother, or wanting a mother in her life. And yeah, I mean, I think she is definitely evil, and she was a great way to show, um, there are these combating forces. It's also, a good way to show how not all Fire Nation people are bad. Like, we shouldn't stereotype people just because they're Fire Nation, which is something you can really easily do with Avatar, right? Like, you're watching it through, you're an impressionable young kid, and you see that just all people that firebend are feared and hated, and using their power for evil. But it teaches you so early that that's not the case. Of course, like, all firebending people or people that live in the Fire Nations aren't bad people, and it's such a great
Yeah.
commentary
They especially do that
on
with book
race.
3 with one of my favorite
Yeah.
episodes where they have the kids and they do the dance party. Uh,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, the
Yeah.
kids from the Fire Nation
Yep.
indoctrination school.
And even
Uh,
even the Painted Lady episode where they save the
yeah,
Fire Nation on the water group. And of course it's like, oh, you're a waterbender, you got to get out of here, right? But
yeah,
it's still so good. And so yeah, like, being an impressionable young kid, seeing these big commentary pieces on race and stereotyping, discrimination, deconstructed as something as simple as, not all people are like this. You shouldn't hate Fire Nation because they're Fire Nation. And as such, you should have unique relations with everybody, regardless of where they're from. And yeah, I mean, it's such a great takeaway. I love it.
yeah, and it also does something that myself growing up with the Iraq War and the war in the Middle
Oh
East that is
yeah,
unfortunately still going.
yeah,
It made me kind of relate to a lot of just the small folk, if you will, the common people of the Fire Nation. Your country is doing something you don't approve of, maybe,
yeah,
or something that you just want to put your head down and work on your farm or work at your Fireflakes cart at the,
yeah.
I'm trying to think of like a very Fire Nation,
The
like
cabbage,
run of
yeah,
the mill, yeah, or the cabbage stand. Yeah, I think that one of the things I really enjoy about Avatar is how we do see Aang kind of going through the Earth Nation, but also going through the Fire Nation and interacting with people kind of on the ground and learning how these larger military operations affect people.
yeah,
And I think that's really important thing to teach kids, like American kids especially, growing up in a neo-colonial state.
yeah.
That was
Also,
a very
also like,
long way to say America's is
yeah,
colonial and interventionist.
yeah, yeah.
So
And also, like,
this really resonated with me.
America has such a disadvantage in terms of, our neighbors, right? Like, we have, um, we have two neighbors, right? And growing up in Europe, I have to imagine it would be so much easier to understand other perspectives, because you have such a wide range of people all around you. And I think that maybe not a lot of Americans talk about that, or realize that maybe that presents an implicit bias because of our upbringing in kind of like an isolationist kind of way. But at the same time, like, the internet exists, right? And I think as
Yeah.
as time goes on and we reach this ever looming point of globalization, like, I think we'll only ever get nicer to each other, and we'll only ever be able to relate more to people that don't look like us, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, and we kind of see that a little bit with Republic City, right? We
Yeah,
see a lot of different people, a lot of different benders, and
yeah,
this finale shows kind of the hope for that. And then the realization later we get on in Korra, which is of course not perfect because humans are
yeah,
involved.
of course.
But we obviously see like people of many different nations knowing each other, being in each other's lives, caring for each other. It is different. You can see it has changed.
Yeah,
And of course there's always going to be animosity to about the past, for
yeah,
sure. I mean, the Fire Nation, this was a long period of domination,
and
which is how it is
yeah,
slightly different from Japan during World War II.
yeah,
They were in, of course, they did take over Korea in the early 1900s, and then they were taking over Manchuria and
yeah.
northeastern China in the 20s and
China, yeah,
30s. But it wasn't a I mean, a lot of people would. Anyway, I don't want to get into it because a lot of people would count the century of humiliation, like from the 1850s all the way to up. So I'll stop there. What I am saying is that the Fire Nation it can be a place to project a lot of our current and historical politics and world
Yeah,
relations, and that's really interesting to see that all come together, especially in the final scene where we have, Fire Lord Zuko and now fully realized Avatar Aang
so good.
going out and addressing the people. And of course, they're kind of lined up by nation. And
Yeah,
unfortunately, there is no Air Nation. We see that. Uh, we do see more Airbenders, of course, in Korra because of Avatar's
thankfully,
family.
thankfully,
Um,
yeah.
but we see this. We do see them kind of lined up in that way, but this seems like the beginning of kind of intermingling for more than has been
Oh yeah,
previously.
and something that I think Korra really does great with is, the entirety of Avatar. We watch it through the lens of wow, how cool would it be to have firebending or water bending or earth or air? Which also I'm curious of which class or which bending you would take personally.
Ooh, we should definitely talk about that.
But the again, all of these relations, all of this, race and society and territorial means and discrimination, all of that is through the lens of these benders. When the reality is there are plenty of people, and we see that with Suko being, a part of the core team. There are plenty of people that don't have bending. So it's amazing when I saw in Korra that was something that they really tackled, and so much so that they introduced someone who is able to take people's powers away. Spoilers, I guess. Sorry, but
I said minor
yeah,
spoilers
yeah,
for Korra. They were warned.
yeah. But ultimately, just now knowing that's part of the story, and that people often had issue with their voice not being in the mix because we just consider this a bending story. I think it's really important that there are, the people that aren't really represented there. Um, in terms of like just strictly when you think of who is there, and it's just through the lens of bending. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that Corey does that, and yeah,
Yeah, and I also think that this finale, something that I found really interesting about it too is that this they were 3 seasons and it felt long at the time, but
Mhm.
when you do a rewatch, they feel relatively short. This is a very compact story. I
Yeah,
don't think very much time is wasted. And as someone who grew up an anime fan, I'm used to filler episodes that are
yeah,
funny, but don't really do much for the story. And Avatar: Last Airbender is not like that. And
yeah,
this finale, although it's technically the longest kind of series, like we've had two-parters before, but it's the longest. It really does not miss a beat. It really doesn't. It really just charges forward. We'll put it that way.
yeah.
With just we're gonna wrap this up and without feeling rushed, but with a certain conviction and motivation that a lot of shows don't have. A lot of shows feel like they're dragging their feet
Yeah.
or they are falling off a cliff.
Yeah, it like honestly, and that's inspired me. I love much quicker stories, that don't drag their feet, that they know they have a story to tell. They want to tell it how they want to tell it and not drag it out, or do something that might be pressured upon them by big business. Of course, like the more episodes you have, the longer you can keep the show on the air, more ad revenue, of course, like all of that I'm sure was a part of the discussions. And I have to imagine, or maybe just headcanon wise, have to imagine that they knew the grand scale, and they knew that this as a quicker story was better than dragging it out, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I really do. And even though I co-host a movie podcast, I've always been a show watcher more than
Yeah,
anything.
yeah.
And so when you devote yourself, it sounds like it's a religion, but when you devote yourself to a show like that,
Yeah,
um, when it pays off, it's great because you can just keep watching it again and again. And I love just watching, Last Airbender over and over. It's just because
yeah,
it's a really comforting show, and especially a lot of people, with quarantine, I'm watching a lot of my comfort shows, and this was one of the first ones that I turned to. I've watched it
yeah,
twice, maybe 3 times all the way through since quarantine started.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Same thing with Parks and Rec, though. I've watched a lot of Parks
yeah.
and
I was gonna
Rec.
say The Office for me. I love The Office so much.
Yeah.
Which I know is somehow confrontational, like or controversial, but um, yeah, I don't know. It's definitely a comfort show of mine. And The White Lotuses, man, I just want to be an old man protecting the world in a secret organization more than like anything else in my entire life.
Right, you
Like,
and not only that, but be an old man who is kind of past his prime, so his main
yeah,
job is like being awesome and wise and leading and
yes,
putting
oh
the
yeah,
younger players where they need to be.
yeah,
I'm just like, damn, Iroh, this whole time,
yeah,
bro. This
so
whole
good.
time, you were the
So good.
smartest. You were smarter than any of them.
Yeah,
Look at you, all these old white men out there to save the world.
and dude, and seeing what happens with him and Korra, wholesome. That is
Oh my gosh, yes.
exactly what his character needed to be.
Absolutely. Like, look,
Yeah,
and I love his connection to the spirit world too,
yeah.
because that's kind of neat to see. It's not just Avatar stuff.
Honestly, his
Um,
story is so good. Like, you know, and it's maybe not even one that's most straightforward in The Last Airbender, right? Like, it is, something that I think after you can really understand the complete story and look back on it and understand the nuance of like who he was and what he went through,
yeah,
losing his child, needing to turn to, or I'm sorry, wanting to get away from the style of war, which was something ingrained to them as children. Like, you look at their father,
yeah,
very militant, um, and of course them breaking, and well, this very specific person breaking away from that with the loss of his child and realizing that he needed to do more for the world. Then and then of course lying to hide the sun people's secret, dragons,
the
right?
Sun
Like
Warriors.
the sun
Yeah,
warriors, yeah.
you
um
got it.
Wholesome,
Yeah,
right? Like, so
yeah.
good.
Oh,
What a
guys, no,
good
I killed the
person.
last dragon. Don't go
Yeah,
looking
don't
over
worry
there. Don't
about
worry
it. Don't
about it.
worry about it.
We
Yeah.
have the Earth Kingdom to conquer. Go
Yeah.
on, boys, go back to it.
It's across the
Yeah,
map. Yeah.
Iroh is and this is something that I've talked a little bit about him in my episode where it was just me talking to a camera about Chinese writing in
Nice.
Avatar: Last Airbender. Because surprise, I could not find a guest for that.
Really? Wow.
Weird. It's so hard to find someone that's as obsessed with it than me. Yeah. Here's an ad for, or I should put out a job ad for people that can read Chinese
Yeah.
and talk to me
Yeah.
about stuff. And yeah, I also talked about it in the Zuko
Mm,
episode, but I think that Iroh and Zuko's arc and kind of what he did that for Zuko that he could not do for Luton
yeah.
is why Iroh, when he did pass, is just like chilling in the spirit world drinking
Yeah.
tea.
Yeah.
Because he did what he feels like, because in the end he is a practical man, but he's also very spiritual, and he, I do think, does have kind of he talks to Zuko about an idea about fate and also destiny. And
Yeah.
this is something that Lady Triple Christina said in my Zuko episode, which is that there is this, Aang and Zuko are destined to be friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Zuko's, great grandparent was
Was
Roku.
is great. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, was Avatar Roku. And so that kind of, in Chinese we call it I'm not Chinese. In Chinese they call it
Yeah.
yuanfen, which is this karmic like kind of energy that two people have where they're going to meet no matter what every single
So
lifetime.
good. Yeah.
And that is what the Avatar has with certain people and the kind of offspring of certain people. And I
Yeah.
love how they integrate that into the show. And Iroh, just as Zuko was meant to be friends with Iroh, Zuko was meant to have, or sorry, just as Zuko was meant to be friends with Aang, he was
Yeah.
meant to be the mentee of Iroh, right? He
When
was meant to have Iroh as a
yeah.
teacher. And we see that so perfectly, just like kind of topped off with a cherry in the finale.
Yeah. I forget his exact name, but or Aang's teacher.
Oh,
Um.
Tenzin. Oh no,
Yes.
Gyatso, Monk Gyatso.
Gyatso.
Sorry,
Yeah. Yeah.
sorry,
When
because
yes.
Tenzin Gyatso is
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
name of the Dalai Lama, and they just split it up.
Oh,
So
really?
Tenzin Aang's son's name is Tenzin, the first name of
Yeah.
the Dalai Lama, and then Gyatso is the other name. And then,
Yeah.
yeah,
Gatsio.
yeah, Monk Gyatso.
When they're talking about, like, how some friendships transition lifetimes, I was just like, dude,
Yeah,
that's
they transcend exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a
I want
beautiful
that.
idea,
Yeah.
and I am
Yeah.
all here for it in
Yeah.
storytelling. If you create a world that has that kind of um fate interacting in it, you can do the cheesy Disney stuff, and I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Cause yeah, friendship can't
Yeah.
transcend. It
I
just
mean,
gets
it
emotional
was
about it.
good. Like that reveal, like, and even that is probably my favorite episode aside from the finale. Is when we learn of the previous Avatar's failings. Him on the volcano, him being betrayed by the Fire Lord, all of that, and also like the whole start of that story, where Zuko at the same time is learning the
About
origin of his
his
family. Yeah,
Yeah, he's learning about Fire Lord Azu no. God dang it.
Fire Lord.
His great grandfather. So that
Yeah,
would have been, oh my god, I know Christy Lady Triple is just screaming in my ear right now if she were here.
Az Sozin.
Sozin. God, of
Yeah,
course, Sozin's comet. Jeez.
yeah.
Yeah,
Sozin's
so
family.
he's reading about how Sozin and Roku were BFFs, and then
Yeah.
everything changed when I'm just kidding.
When the Fire Nation
Everything
attacked.
changed when Roku became the Avatar.
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, and that's something that I think is so good about the finale as well, because they give time for all of the characters. It's not just the big one singular battle. We have Uncle Iroh in the Earth Kingdoms reconquering it for the Earth Kingdoms, like such a great way
Rather
to.
than there as a conqueror for
Yeah,
the Fire Nation, just poetry. Chef's kiss to that.
absolutely, chef's kiss all the way. And of course, seeing the brother and sister fight, like giant plumes of blue and red fire, just of
Beautiful.
vaporizing the city. Like, oh, it's so good. And of course, Azula would be the one that would break the Agni Kai and try to
Yes,
attack Katara. Like, oh, and then he does the selfless act.
exactly.
Yes, man.
Of jumping in front. Oh my god! And that's the thing is that I feel like the writers really understood what each character
Yeah,
needed. Like,
exactly.
and
Yeah,
especially because Sokka. I was just talk about Sokka for a second. That first episode where he is such a misogynist prick. He is like so different by the finale where he's
he's
holding on to Toph.
literally
He's
holding on to his
losing his
top.
space sword to
Yes,
protect Toph. I'm just
yes.
like, yes, Sokka,
Oh,
yes.
that part as well. When he throws the trusty boomerang, it's like, "Don't fail me now." And then
Yeah.
it's just they're hanging there, and it's them looking down, and it's like, or I'm sorry, then the soldiers come in, and it's like, Toph,
I don't think Boomerang's
I
coming
don't think
back
Boomerang's
this
coming back.
time.
Man,
Oh,
that hit
that
me like,
got me because
yeah,
we've been following that mother effing Boomerang for so like
yeah,
I'm thinking about the first time I saw it, like while it was airing, not where I could just like breeze through it
yeah,
on
yeah,
Netflix. When I saw that and he was like, I don't think Boomerang's coming back, I literally teared up because
oh
he was
yeah,
the Boomerang guy. He even says that in one of the episodes. What am
yeah.
I? I'm the Boomerang guy. Like what is he
And
without his boomerang?
it's such a great point, because like it's more than a boomerang, right? It's the idea of his ability, not having powers, having this one very specific thing that can help, and to know that it did not work, that they're still in trouble. He is without option. There is nothing else that
Yeah.
can be done. He is at the absolute zero, and of course, Suki comes in and saves him. So,
Yes,
which was so good.
Suki. I know, and she also represents that team no powers, right? Where
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
what we have this world has a history of weaponry and martial arts, and you can train
yep,
yourself. You can be the best person you can be as
yeah.
far as fighting and helping Team Avatar. And I think also what I liked about that scene too is Toph also feels helpless because she can't see.
Oh man, knowing that
So
she's blind while
she's
she's hanging there,
literally
yeah,
blind, not tough blind,
yeah,
blind. And she's hanging off of this. I'm glad she can't see because it's scary.
yeah,
Maybe it makes it less scary. But she's
maybe,
hanging
yeah,
off of this steampunk war balloon, and it's the tension was really well done, and it didn't
yeah,
seem overly dramatic. I mean, it's this band of kids against a Fire Nation army.
yeah, yeah,
The sheer magnitude
yeah,
of the kind of David versus Goliath here is really well done, and probably one of the more kind of, if you want to point at kind of spectacular like finales in animation to have that spectacular things blowing up and yet
yeah.
still focuses on the themes and the characters and what they've been through. I mean, this is just served up on a silver platter as far as storytelling.
Yeah, because just on the animation, like if if none of the strings were closed up and all of the storylines were still open at the end of this, just the animation was enough to make this one of the greatest finales. Like
Exactly.
the fight between the two, seeing the orb come around him and every element working together,
Oh,
the
so
physical
cool.
embodiment of what
Yes.
Avatar are,
Yes.
like, ooh,
Yeah.
so good.
So well done.
And then of course, like, one of the big scenes that stand, or cool moments of animation that stand out to me is when he is in that form, and he has like the fire tentacles, and he just like, lifts it up, when he's like flying above, and the fire lord's on the ground. That just for some reason is so big in my mind. Also, there's a point where I think he gets attacked with, like, there's a blast of fire coming in, and then he like does like a little bit of air, and it like creates like this concave, thing around him as he gets like pushed back. Oh, I don't know why. I don't think I'll ever forget those scenes. It's
No,
just,
there's very, very iconic
yeah.
fight scenes in this. Absolutely. And of course character moments as well. But yeah,
Yes.
the
Yes.
that final battle is I was really surprised because I remember I would have friends over and we would talk, and I was in middle school and then high school, so we were at lunch, and I remember my friends being like, man, I don't know, like, we've been 3 years on this show. I really like it. I think this is going to be a big thing, but like,
Yeah.
what if the finale sucks?
Yeah.
And we all looked at him and we were like, don't you jinx it, first of all. And they were like, look, I mean, we put this much into this show. We trust the writers. Let's see what happens. And there was one particular guy in our group who was really pessimistic about it. And then when we got back to school after it had aired, he was not saying anything but praises for that finale.
Yeah.
He was like, this is the best thing I've ever seen.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It is without a doubt. I don't know. I want to say number one, but I'm sure
Like,
there's,
this is why
maybe
this
there's
is one of
another.
the shows where I'm like, this is why I was a Nick kid, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And then a Cartoon Network kid, and then after that, okay, fine, Disney Channel here and there, whatever.
Yeah. Adult Swim, Disney, I guess
Adult
now Disney's a
Swim,
part of my life because they own
yes.
Marvel, but yeah.
Well, and I really like the made-for-TV Disney movies. I was
Yeah.
the perfect, like, I was the
That's a
right
good point.
age and
Yeah.
demographic for like Hillary Duff playing in Cadet Kelly. Like,
Even
even
Stevens, anything. Oh
Steven.
yeah.
Yeah, that was that was good times.
Yeah, that was good times. Also, like, magic, something magic. I forget it. But yeah, all of those, like, and they're kind of like the exact same movie. Young person either left at home, or the only person on the team that can do something, or
Yeah.
just very very classic stories, I guess. But yeah, they were just so
I
good.
think this was actually a very competitive time, I would say, in children's shows,
Oh yeah,
including animation. And so for Avatar: Last Airbender to come out of this so well recognized, and it did take a while. I have a
I think
lot
it
of
took
friends who
way
did
too
not
long.
see it until it
Yeah,
was on Netflix, and I
yeah,
was
same.
like, I've been talking at your face about this show for years. It
My
goes up
entire
on
life. Yeah,
Netflix, and then the next day you've seen it all. This is
yeah,
not fair.
yeah. Firstly,
I
one,
deserve credit.
yeah, how dare you not respect my opinion and suggesting shows to you?
Yes.
And two, yeah, told you so. It's amazing.
Told you. And
Yeah,
I do the same thing with Parks and Rec, though, to be fair.
yeah.
Like, I do. I'm a show bragger. When I
Oh
found a
yeah,
show
yeah.
that's so good and I know it's good, and I'm like, you say you weren't going to watch this other show before that show I said, but you're going to regret it. And then,
Do you watch any anime? Well, I mean,
I haven't in a
I guess
while. I was a big fan of Attack on Titan there for a
Attack
while,
on Titan.
but
Yeah, I was gonna bring it up.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, but not really anymore. But I still have a soft spot for animation because I spent so much of my life on it. I went to anime conventions, like,
yeah.
super big into animation.
Um.
Oh, let's do the bending thing though. You mentioned
Oh
earlier, Hacks.
yeah,
We can always
yeah,
go back to talking about everything else, anything
yeah.
else, but that's always fun to talk about. So
Yes.
I I would want to be an earthbender, but
Okay.
every quiz I say, and they're not wrong, is that I'd be a firebender.
Oh snap.
So,
Um.
like, I'm not a
Yeah,
Slytherin, I'm a Hufflepuff, but actually, being a Hufflepuff can help with being a firebending ruling master because we're more charismatic about it.
that makes sense. That makes sense. I could see it. Definitely the powerful vibes. I would be. Water, 100% water.
100% water?
Yeah, I've thought about it since I was a kid. Water just has like such a wide variety of things you can do. Not even to think about bloodbending or anything like that, but water is just so available everywhere, right?
Yeah, we
Um,
get that with Katara learning about the
the
sweat. We also,
sweat,
yeah,
pulling it from the
tears,
air,
taking it from the plants, poor
from the
flowers.
plants, yeah.
Yeah, water is life.
And of course there's three forms, right? Like you can quite literally the definition
Water,
of
ice,
water
and yeah, and yeah, fog.
and
You could create fog, which
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
kind of helpful in battle. Be like, you can't see me, ha ha.
Yeah,
No.
like, imagine
Oh,
that.
I'm
Like,
glad I
you have
haven't talked
control
about
over
the. I
everything.
haven't actually my next nation. I was going to focus on the water tribes, so I might be able to convince you into coming back on here because we did the air nation,
Yeah,
and I was going to do water next, and then I'm thinking maybe fire after that. I'm not sure, but I'm definitely going to do water next. So that's exciting.
yeah. Yeah,
It's one of
water
the ones that I have. I have thoughts on everything, but I'm
yeah,
very interested in, especially the dynamics between the North and the South Pole.
same. And I talked to you about a little bit of this in DM, but I am trying to write, a spec script to submit it to Nickelodeon or the Avatar Studios to see if, like, I could create something that could potentially be in the, canon. Um and that story is going to be a water-based story.
Awesome.
Yeah, because it's
I
just
like that.
yeah, I love it
Oh,
so
so you
much.
must really like the times when Korra's in the South Pole, then, huh?
Of course,
Yeah, you must
yeah,
just die in those scenes. Actually,
yeah,
so when I first saw it, I least liked water. I loved Sokka and Katara,
yeah,
but that was my least favorite, and it's kind of gotten up there. The reason that I want to be an Earthbender is
yeah.
because the Earth Kingdom is the most Chinese influenced.
Makes sense.
And so I'm most interested in that. But yeah, I'm definitely my personality is Firebender though.
Yeah,
So
it.
can't after you've taken every quiz out there and it all says Firebender,
You
cannot
just
deny
gotta,
it.
yeah, you gotta
Gotta
take it.
just lean into
Yeah.
it. But like I said, I'm not a Slytherin, so don't.
At the same time, a lot of, like, maybe those people making those tests haven't, don't really understand the dynamic
They don't
of
understand the
what Fire
nuance of the
Nation is.
Fire
Yeah,
Nation.
exactly. Yeah,
It's fine. I'm fine to being Fire Nation. And that's the thing is that we see in a timeline when Fire Nation's all imperialistic and everything, but
yeah.
yeah, it wasn't always like that.
Wasn't always like that. Yeah. Yeah. Water would be my number one. Although Earth, I love the idea of being an Earthbender. Like, air seems like it could be so powerful. Same with fire. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I just think raw power
Yeah.
and utility, both Waterbender and Earthbender, just miles ahead in terms of utility. And then, of course, I think just by a slim margin, Waterbender could, it'll would probably always beat Earth. I don't know.
So you must enjoy the form then that they
The
fight with
fighting,
as well. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because the earthbending is a lot more kind of stand your ground kung
Rugged,
fu
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
stances, like, kind of like bear stances and stuff like
Mhm.
that.
You're a boulder.
But yes, I the
Yeah.
boulder.
The boulder.
Whereas uh with water bending, it's more like Tai Chi, which
Yeah.
is a lot about usually stretching, slow
Fluid
movements, very
motion.
fluid
Yeah.
movements. And so yeah, so you could take some Tai Chi classes, hacks, and then pretend
Heck
you're
yeah.
water bending, which I have done.
Oh, I
So
already do that. Like, ever since I was a kid, being in the shower and just, like, flicking
oh
water
my
off my
god,
fingers,
yes,
dude. Yeah.
so much fun.
Yeah.
Good stuff, good stuff. No, yeah, this was a huge part of my childhood, though.
Yeah.
The idea of bending and the idea of like now when I watch like I have watched Aquaman because I'm talking about the
Mm.
Snyder Cut tonight,
Nice.
and I was kind of uh, it was like anytime they did anything with water, I was like, oh, they're water bending. Like I can't see it
Yeah.
any other way.
Same exact thing.
Like
And
it's totally changed the way that I see these kinds of fantasy and superhero movies or anything where they're like manipulating the elements. That's all I
yeah,
see.
that same 100%. I see the same thing. And, like, I'll even that's just, like, mentally how I derive powers, right? Like, I always, like, break it down into one of the four classes because it seems like all of them kind of represent what, these different forms of power and energy and stuff like that you often see in fantasy or just any story, really. So I always find myself breaking them down to these, like, core elements as opposed to something that relates, I guess, to the show that I'm watching. And but seeing the Snyder Cut as well, those water scenes, they bothered me for some reason. I thought the same
Yeah.
thing. Like they were definitely water bending there, but just like I don't know. It feels like they had an opportunity to use that differently, I guess.
Yeah.
The usage of all of that, and they didn't. So I don't know. But I also thought the Snyder Cut was great.
Yeah,
As a whole.
I'm really excited to see it tonight, or to
Yeah.
talk about it tonight, because I have lots of thoughts, especially about gender, the way that women were presented differently in the Snyder Cut. Um,
Interesting.
and yeah,
That's
and the
pretty cool.
difference between Lois Lane and the Justice League and Lois Lane and Man of Steel are totally
Yeah.
different. Like, I
Oh yeah.
understand that she's mourning, but a little bit more depth to her character would be appreciated.
Yeah, that's a really good
Yeah.
point. She is only one character.
She has one setting in that
Yeah.
movie, and in the Snyder Cut, a little bit more depth could probably go further, in my opinion. But
Yeah,
all
totally agree.
overall, it's a great example of how editing and how storytelling vision, how important that is to the final product.
Without a doubt, yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, like again, not to give spoilers or talk too much about this on this specific stream, but yeah, like what they did with the Flash, the introduction of some of the characters that like I knowing the Justice League and watching that as a cartoon as a
Yeah.
child, I loved the reveal about midway through the story of one of the characters that they introduced. I also loved how they made
Loved that too, because I'm an
yeah,
original Justice League fan too.
yes,
And
yes,
actually,
yes.
what I watched Justice League for the Flash and for Wonder Woman. That's
Oh
watching,
yeah,
like, growing up, those are my favorite members of the Justice League. So to see
yeah,
them have, a more complete story
yeah.
arc was nice.
Cyborg too. The fact that they like really fleshed out his powers and showed how powerful he really was. Not just like, oh, I'm a robot now and I'm also a
Yeah.
person. I'm also a football player. Like
Yeah, the
seeing what he
larger
can
questions
do.
about what it means to be
Yeah,
human are in the Snyder Cut. And in the
yeah.
Jaws cut, they're like, look, it's a guy. He used to play football. Now he's a robot. Don't worry about it.
Don't think
Let's
anything else about it. Yeah, just know those three things. Yeah,
But I think that the Snyder Cut is a good example of you know what we have here with the finale of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
yeah,
The Joss Cut shows how wrong it could go with these
yeah,
kinds of things. That there are that the eyes of the fans kind of on these very big fandoms. It's a lot of pressure, but when it under all that pressure, if the writers do well, it's a feat, and it's very, very
yeah.
impressive.
Yeah, it'll forever be something important to me. I will probably always compare it to anything that I watch now, and maybe that's not fair to what I'm watching now. But at the same time, like from an early age, I understood that this to be the benchmark that everything should probably aspire to be. And again, maybe that's unfair, but a lot of times that standard isn't met just because it is such an amazing show. Um, but at the same time, I'm also one of those people who like love a lot of things, and I'll describe that I love things a lot more than I think I probably should, I guess. But um, I just more times than not, I like the thing that I'm watching.
Yeah, exactly. And I I don't like to spend time on things that I don't enjoy. I don't think most people
Exactly,
do if they have the
exactly, yeah,
option not to. Um, and what I had small gripes with when I first saw it, become smaller gripes now.
yeah.
I was just, I guess it's mostly because I was never super Aang and Katara fan, them being together. I'm not a big
Oh,
shipper, but I was
yeah,
at that age. I'm not now.
good.
And so at the time, I was like, okay, I get it. That's fine. But I wasn't like elated about it.
I was elated about it. I loved it. Yeah,
Hax was like, "Yay!"
yeah, because
they
I was
kiss.
Aang, right? Like that was the character that I most related with, or
Okay.
wanted to aspire to be, or saw myself in the shoes of. Like, so the fact that it was like, yes, he finally got the girl. Yes, like my boy, dude, my man.
There he goes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's
also
the
the kiss.
difference. Zuko was my favorite character at the time, so I was like,
Yeah,
if anything, you should be with Zuko,
I
whatever.
will say
So
I do remember
I'm not that
feeling.
annoying Zutara fan. Don't worry, everyone.
I do remember feeling that as a child, like feeling like why do I want them to be together? Like why, like it should be Aang, but at the same time Zuko,
Yeah. Also
maybe
very.
Zuko, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
he's a good boy now. Like go to him.
Also, I don't know, Toph and Katara, if Avatar ever decided to,
Oh my god,
be
amazing.
queer,
Yeah,
I would be here for it.
absolutely amazing.
There's
Yeah,
that episode of them going to get when they get dolled up, the Tales of Ba Sing Se and
yeah,
season 2. And I just love how they kind of finally get a little bit of a
fine.
friendship
Yeah,
going there, and it's really cute. And it's like, you know what, Avatar, I get it, but there's no way that everyone in all those kingdoms are all heterosexual. But I get it's a kids
yeah,
show.
yeah,
That's what we have to do. Uh,
yeah. And also the
but yeah,
time, like if Avatar,
yeah,
honestly, I think there'd be many, many more gay couples, and also trans people. I
yeah,
like,
and
they,
non-binary individuals.
yeah,
Hmm.
and I think even then, um, the characters that they had were very diverse. Yes, there were a lot of. Was there a single gay couple in the original Avatar? I feel like there was one.
Mm,
Maybe not. I don't know. Regardless,
I don't think so,
but
but
yeah,
I'm
it's
not
still
positive.
like, you know, I don't know. It wasn't that like the. I don't know what I want to say. I think
Sorry, I
I
was
think
like,
the
Avatar
yeah.
isn't queer enough. Hacks talk.
Oh no, 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 not at all. Like I think that it probably didn't need to be. I like that we're exploring some of that, more of that in Katara. I'm sorry, in Korra. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's probably just a product of the time. Like, knowing that
Yeah.
the creators of the show are now working on new projects, I'm sure that we're definitely going to get more gay and queer characters
I mean,
and
statistically, one of the Avatar incarnations had to be gay. Work from there.
yeah, probably, yeah. Or
Like,
or it's just like the fire sages are going to be like, yeah, this is Avatar, whoever, and this is his best friend, and it's just them like hugging.
yes,
You
this
know what I'm talking
lifelong
about? Yeah,
friend, and
they
whenever
live
his friend died,
together.
he cried for 2 weeks, and
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
gee, history, way to bury the gay there.
And they were all naked, like all the
Yeah.
time. No one knows why. It was just they were best friends and naked all the time. Like,
Yes, and
don't
it's
think
just
anything
nothing
else.
to don't
Yeah,
think anything of it. Yeah, I know the common term is favorite used in
yeah,
a lot
yeah,
of historical documents. Oh, the princess's favorite, and it's like,
yeah.
uh-huh. I see
Or it's
what you
like just two best friends hanging out. Like, yeah,
mean. Yeah, just buddies
just
doing
buddies.
buddy things. Didn't take
Yeah,
his wife on this retreat, but took
yeah.
his buddy.
Don't think about the
Don't
perversion
think
of
about it
just
too
yeah,
much. Yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, no, that's something that Korra does better ish. And
yeah,
I know everything's progressing, we hope, as far as
yeah,
that. But I think overall this show is kind of you could just wrap it up to a ball so perfectly, and it kind of just comes to you. It's not easy, of course. It's very nuanced, a lot of the themes and what's going on, but the way that it's presented to the audience is really, it's amazing that they could do something that where kids are going to learn the major kind of lessons and see the major themes, and so will adults later, and they'll still appreciate it and not find it
yeah,
necessarily too childish.
yeah, without a doubt. And honestly, I think the reason that again, we didn't really go into sexuality too much is because they're kids, right? Like,
Yeah.
it needed to be a good hero story and a good story of morals and stuff like that. And we didn't really need to explore who these people are. I would have loved if Toph was gay. Even outside of the show, like we know that they have kids, or that she has kids, in Korra and stuff like that. But ultimately, yeah, I mean they're children, right? So part of me is
Yeah.
like, we
A
don't need
little
that at
weird
all. But
shipping. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But at the same
Let's
time,
let
like,
them figure this stuff out when they're older.
yeah. But at the same time, like these are people that exist, and of course, representation is so important in media. And so like it wouldn't have hurt to have anything in canon be gay. And
Like, it
yeah,
didn't even have to be a big thing. It could be Chet or Haru. Oh, I kind of think, I don't know. There was, okay, so like, this is very off topic with the finale, but it just made me think of it. Chet's crew with Smellerby and Longshot.
yeah,
Smellerby, I got a trans or possibly non-binary vibe
yeah.
from.
That's what I was
I
thinking
will
of. 100%. Yes,
say that's
yes.
the one thing maybe you were thinking about earlier, Hacks.
Smeller B is never described, I think, or is always described in a very androgynous way. And I
Yeah,
love that.
and they
Yeah,
act androgynously, I would
yeah,
say.
yeah,
So there we go. One thing. Hey, I mean, like, that's the thing, is that this, no shows are perfect, but you can see with it was starting to make
yeah,
a. And also I also think that I just love. I'm sorry, this is so random, but that comment in the episode in season 3 when they're seeing the play of themselves and
Oh
they're like,
yeah.
did Chet die? And they're like, it's really unclear. That kind of meta commentary is why
Yeah.
this show is so beautiful.
It is. And honestly, when they steal the egg from the Sun Warriors temple,
Yeah.
Aang is like, and Aang is inexplicably like, maybe we shouldn't do that. Like, I'm just
Yeah.
really worried of things that look like Indiana. He doesn't say that, but
He
you
doesn't
know,
say it, but basically, like, this is
Indiana
some
Jones,
Indiana
and
Jones
it's like
shit.
he
Let's
winks at
not.
the camera, like,
Yes.
you
Right?
know what I mean? Like, and of
Yes. It's
course,
not.
it
And
goes
when they
bad.
do the meta commentary on when they go, oh, the the Earth King and his bear, his platypus bear?
Yeah,
No, his bear. His elephant bear? No, his bear. Well, that's just weird.
that doesn't make sense. Yeah,
I just love that
yeah,
the kind of commentary on the fact that a lot of the animals there are these like hybrids.
yeah. And it's so smart too. Like, I love that they stuck with that. I think there's like 3 animals that are just straight, what they would be in the real world.
There's a cat, Miyuki, the little cat.
Yeah,
He's
but
just chilling
I
there being a
remember.
cat.
Do you remember watching the cartoon and they would have like the director commentary? Like there would be
I
like special episodes that had like extra things on the screen that it would like try to show you the behind the scenes. Um, I'm butchering the way I'm explaining this, I guess, but I remember like one of those scenes or one of those episodes, and it showed and it talked about that exact thing. It talked about like how every single animal is a hybrid of 2 animals, except for like 3 characters. And of course, I remember one was the bear, and
yeah, it was so funny.
man, but yeah, it's
There,
so
yeah,
good.
and
It's
there
such
was
a smart
that.
show.
Yes, and there was that one episode I think in season 2, whenever because they're in Ba Sing Se, whenever Aang like frees the animals out into
Yeah,
another ring of the city. There are just all sorts of crazy
yeah.
combinations, just little things like that from the show.
Can we talk about how cute turtle ducks are, though?
Oh
Oh,
my gosh, turtle
right,
ducks! I
right.
cannot get over it. There was a meme a couple of days ago where it's like, oh, you like pick your favorite, and it had Appa, Momo, a turtle duck, and I forget another one, but I picked the turtle duck. I'm like, I'm sorry, flying lemurs, and I'm sorry, sky bison. Look, that would be really awesome to like ride on the sky bison stuff, but it's so big. And look at the little turtle duck.
Look
They're
at it.
just
Yeah.
so cute.
Honestly, I wonder what it looks like as an adult, though. I wonder, like,
Oh,
we've
I
never
wonder how big they
seen.
get.
Yeah, yeah. Because I
As
could see
big as
them
a
be real
tortoise or big as
ugly.
a duck?
Yeah, I could see them be pretty ugly depending on how they grow
This
up.
is
But yeah,
true. Awesome. So last thoughts on the finale, Hacks? Anything that because we've been jumping all
yeah,
around, which is kind of how we do over here at the Amy Blackfire podcast. But is
yeah.
there anything that you were like, I must put on the record of YouTube/podcast?
Yeah. Honestly, I I guess what I would want on the record is that I love the finale so much. It's such a big thing. It taught me so much about storytelling and how to like very, very neatly take all these stories, tie them together in a way that makes sense, that it serves exactly what it needs to the audience, to show us exactly what we need to in terms of an engaging episode by itself. And yeah, I mean, the world that they created, I have so much appreciation for it, and I hope that maybe it'll lead to me writing or adding to that community myself, because it is just something that's always been such a big part of my life, and I'm really glad to talk about it now.
Absolutely, yeah. I started out with this, I was like, a Song of Ice and Fire, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
But I thought, okay, I'll do Historic Materials because I like the books and the shows coming out,
Yes.
and I want to talk to my friends about it. And now I'm also doing like X-Men. So, I'm kind of we're talking about the comics, but we're also going to present it to kind of non-comics readers. But then I just thought there's something missing in fantasy that
Oh
has
yeah.
really changed the way I look at fantasy and specifically storytelling, and it's Avatar. And I
Yeah.
kept finding myself listening to podcasts or talking to people about it and just being like, no, this is my opinion and I want to have other people on to talk. I was like, okay, well, I have a channel. Let's do this.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
glad that I started talking about Avatar: Last Airbender because I mean it's an obvious fit for me because of the Asian symbolism, but
Yeah.
I
Heck
think
yeah.
my love of good, tight, effective storytelling is why more than anything this show holds such a special. It's in my top 5 favorite shows of all time, which is saying a lot
Yeah.
because I watch a lot of shows. Other usually I have to categorize like my 5. All right, my top 5 favorite like CW, DC
Yeah.
shows of all time. Like usually I have to categorize it, but this is like all time favorite shows. It's up there. It's in the top 5,
Yeah. Yeah. No
and
doubt about it.
it's just one of the most beautiful and mind-blowing, and it's really just a work of art. And I think it also shows that animation is not dead and can only get better. And I think that I love live action, but I
Yeah.
think there is a special place in society for and our culture for animation that's this amazing.
Yeah, I think it really paved the way for a lot of animation. Like you look at BoJack Horseman, which is a very serious cartoon.
I
That
love Bojack
it
Horseman.
is
Also,
so good.
Honeydew is of the devil. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
I have a lot of
yes,
honey.
yes,
I have a lot of fruit salad opinions.
yeah, yeah. No honeydew. um, and yeah, but BoJack Horseman is just fire, and it's such a great way. And I
The
think a lot of people
tone. That's
don't
the thing
watch
is
it.
it nails a tone. It has a tone.
So
You know what it
yeah,
is, and it sticks with it.
yep,
Avatar: Last Airbender has a tone, and it sticks with it.
yep,
That's just like BoJack Horseman's actually one of my favorite animated shows as well, and
yeah,
it has that this overlying tone that I think you go in and by the first couple of episodes what it's going to be, and then it
yeah.
lives up to that. And it might surprise you, but especially there was, I think one of the last seasons, it got really hard. Bojack Horseman, like
Really,
it got
yeah,
hard, but you kept going because you were invested in the story. And it's a satire. So
yeah,
it's also
yeah.
making jokes. But Avatar Last Airbender, other than kind of riding animals, and there are some joke parts, but
There's
it
definitely some
has
joke
this
parts. Yeah,
this tone
yeah,
of epic fantasy that
yeah.
I think that's packaged as a kid show in a
So
way that I don't think will ever quite be able to be done in the same way. And that's what makes it a special show, because that
yeah,
tone is reserved just for that. For example, um, all of my listeners know exactly what I'm talking about because I do this all the time. The Poppy War, which is a series a fantasy series written by a Chinese American author. Please check it out. It's really
will do.
great. She said she's been approved for an adaptation of her novels, and she says, I would like it to be, it doesn't have to be animated, but I want it to be like Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Nice.
That and that's how much this show has affected other people who are making especially a pseudo Asian fantasy world.
Yeah.
And hers is darker than Avatar for sure, especially the last bit of the book. Content warning for people for extreme violence and descriptions of sexual assault. If you,
Mm.
that is in the first book. I am not to the second and third because I'm taking the most meticulous notes in the world. That it's
Yeah.
wrong that I'm doing this, but putting this time into it will make for better content later.
Yeah.
I'll have a searchable Word document of all of my notes. But the references, she has a lot more references to Chinese culture specifically, whereas Avatar: Last Airbender is very pan-Asian, many different Asian cultures.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna have a really good time making content about that. But the fact that she cites Avatar: Last Airbender as her goal as far as an adaptation out of her literature shows how esteemed this is when it comes to animation and to storytelling.
Yeah. That's really awesome. I'll definitely check it out. I actually have a bookmark now. Um,
The Poppy War, yeah,
yeah.
I every when I'm on live streams and we're doing our plugs and I haven't said the Poppy War, people in the comments will be like, Amy, you forgot something. And then they always mess with my head because I think I forgot to say something I'm gonna be on later.
Oh man.
So I'm like, okay, it was the Poppy War. Okay, well, I'm gonna just quickly go through what I've got coming up, Hax, and then
Yeah.
I'll have you do the same so that people know what's coming on over at Haxdogma and over here at Amy Blackfire. So I'm going to continue marching ahead with the Avatar: Last Airbender content. Like I said, we're gonna do the Water Nation next. I'm very excited for that. And I'm definitely going to do a character study next, thinking maybe Toph or Iroh. Not sure yet, but it's going to be very fun. And like I said, lots more of my other content coming up. His Dark Materials, Song of Ice and Fire. I swear the Poppy War content is coming out. I'm working with Lo. More links, Lo the Links and me coming together again. We got some Links Fire content coming at you. We're going to talk about that. I'm also going to have them on to talk about for those of you who are interested in Song of Ice and Fire, we're going to be talking about cross-dressing in Song of Ice and Fire. So we're going to be talking about Lyanna Stark as the Knight of the Laughing Tree, Brave Danny Flint up at the wall, and Sorella / Alaris, which is technically not, canon approved, but like it's one of the most accepted fan theories. So we're going to be talking about women dressing up as men to be able to move through masculine spaces. So that's going to be very fun. And yeah, we got a lot coming up. I will be on Geeksterillia tonight. Actually, you're watching this, so this will have happened in the past. So please, dear listeners, check out Geeksterillia. Cecilia has a Spanish-speaking geek podcast, but once a month she speaks to someone in English, and I am going to be that person this month. We're going to talk about the Snyder Cut. So sorry, we got into it a little bit in this episode, but if you want to hear all my opinions, check her out, Geeks to Really. She's got a great podcast, especially if se habla español. So good stuff. Awesome. Hax, what do you got going on over there?
I got so much stuff.
So much.
No, I'm working on Marvel breakdowns for the Falcon and the Winter Soldier right now. I'm hoping to do a video each week detailing my thoughts on each episode. Also working on the Avatar spec script and a book right now called The Guise of Nightfall. It's going to be fantasy. And it is coming together really well, and I'm really excited. It has steampunk, which you were excited about earlier.
Oh, I'm currently writing a fantasy novel that integrates steampunk. I'm not at all to the level of a lot of people as far as being done, but yeah,
I mean, that's part of the process.
I started during quarantine, and I think I'm gonna keep going with it because
the
few hours I'm able to throw at it have been just so pleasurable for me.
Yeah, writing is so much fun, and I have self-published one book, and if that's all I ever self-publish, I'm happy with that, because I don't know, there's something really cool about having all of your thoughts into a story and having it out there for the world. And that first time you hear someone say that they like your writing is such a great feeling. I mean, that
absolutely.
Yeah. But that's ultimately all that I'm working on right now. And yeah, if you like analytical videos or anything that dives into television, or honestly, like, I really just cover a pretty big scope of things. Anything that really catches my interest. I started on Westworld. Love Westworld so much. But yeah, the analytical breakdowns and stuff like that are where my mind is right now.
Awesome. And yeah, I've been a fan of your content for a while, so I was very excited to get you on, because you definitely put the work into your videos. It's really impressive, because I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna have friends. Oh, someone on to talk. Okay, I'll throw up an image here and there, whatever. But like, I have to not put in, the hours that you do, because I have to put it into being a PhD student, unfortunately.
Definitely.
Hax works really hard on his content, and it's always really thorough and well done. During WandaVision, your content was a must watch for me after I had seen the episode and see all the things that I missed that Hax didn't.
that makes me feel so very good, and I appreciate you telling me that.
So it was really great. So everyone, please, all the links will be in the description. If you're on YouTube, if you're listening in the podcast form, it will be in podcast description. So you will be able to find Hax on Twitter and his YouTube channel as well. So thank you so much for coming on, Hax. I hope you can come on for future Avatar discussions.
Definitely.
Because there's so much to talk about with this. And Water Nation is next, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you very much for coming, and everyone, I will see you next time. Thanks for listening.